You're listening to a production of SportsLink Digital Radio.
With Halloween approaching and the spooky season upon us, it's officially scary season for many college football teams as they head into must-win situations as we enter the back half of the college football season. Hello and welcome. I am Caden Vincent with the best co-host in the business, Ryan Stojitz. Ryan, how are we doing on this fine Thursday?
Well, after such a wonderful introduction, how can I not be doing great? I'm really happy to be here once again and ready to talk some football.
And we have another special guest, freshman Landon Traylor. Landon, how are you doing?
Well, that intro really scared me. I'm getting ready for Halloween now, so I'm really scared.
I think we're all in the spooky spirit, and that's exactly what you want. And for a lot of these college football teams, they're getting in these games where they're must-win situations and no turning back now. So, guys, what do you say we just jump right into it? A great homecoming win for the Ball State Cardinals, getting their first MAC win of the season, taking down Central Michigan 24-17. Ryan, what are your takeaways from that game?
Well, it feels great that we can talk about a win. The Ball State Cardinals did beat Central Michigan 24-17 on homecoming.
Oh, if I said 19, I meant 17.
And it was a game that really you just felt the positive energy from the start. You felt the energy on campus during the week. You felt the positive vibes in the tailgate and in the pregame in the stadium. Crowd filing in nicely. It was a beautiful weather day football-wise. And it was great to see the Cardinals come out and start out good. That first offensive drive that they had that resulted in a touchdown, putting them up 7-0 early. That was something we haven't seen from the Cardinals. We've always seen them, or at least most times this season, seen them start off really badly. In the Georgia Southern game, I think they were down 14-0 halfway through the first quarter. And in the games against Western Michigan and Eastern Michigan, they were playing from behind pretty much the whole way. The Toledo game was pretty much a stalemate, but this was different because this one, the Cardinals were able to take control, set the tone of the game. Marquez Cooper had an incredible day on the ground. He had 100 yards rushing in the first half alone.
Yeah. That
was the Marquez Cooper we knew, and that was the Marquez Cooper that Ball State expected to see when they brought him in from the transfer portal from MAC rival Kent State. And something else that really stuck out to me, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more, consistent quarterback play for the Cardinals. Kyle Kelly getting his second consecutive start. He did his thing on the ground, but also really showed some promise as a passer and made Central Michigan's defense have to respect the pass. So great win. I'm sure we'll talk about it more. Lots of bright spots, but the Cardinals keeping their bowl hopes alive for now and getting their first conference win. You love to see it.
Yeah, Ryan, you mentioned a lot about the offense. So, Landon, I'm going to kind of go over to you now. What do you make about that Ball State defense that we saw on Saturday?
I'm a big fan of defense. I love defensive games. You know, this final score, 24-17, is my type of football game. They really continue to be the backbone of this team since the Western Michigan loss. The Western Michigan loss kind of was maybe the game that everybody looks in the mirror and say, we got to reevaluate where we're going. And I think our strong point all season has been our defense. I mean, you look at the first quarter against Georgia, I think we only gave up 7 points. And yes, I mean Georgia, not Georgia Southern. And Kentucky, we held a lead over Kentucky.
It was 7-3
after the first quarter.
Yeah. So our first quarter defense continues to be good. That Georgia Southern game was just a disaster. I don't want to talk about it, but we held their quarterback, Jace Bauer, to 161 yards and just one touchdown. That's a quarterback who went toe-to-toe with Notre Dame on the road a couple weeks ago. And then they gave up just 99 yards rushing. It's tough to hold an opponent to under 100 yards rushing. And then, as you mentioned, Kelly with 101 yards passing, 64 yards rushing, and 2 rushing touchdowns. All that with Marquez Cooper. I mean, he scored 160, or he had 162 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. And to be finally backed up by your defense after a good offensive performance, it's really good to see. Because once again, that Western Michigan, you put up 24 points. Your quarterback has over 300 yards passing. You expect to win those games. Your defense gave up 42 points, though.
Yeah, I think going back to that Western Michigan, as I said, Ball State had a lot of exciting plays and they had a lot of electric plays. But to me, offensively, there were still some struggles that I didn't really see against Central Michigan. They played a really good all-around football game, offensively, defensively. And I think my biggest takeaway is how they were able to hold the Central Michigan running game. Penny Boone, who we know, Ryan, you and I talked about it last week, is they have to hold the running game for Central Michigan or they will take over. 18 carries for 58 yards. He did have a touchdown, but that was late in the game. And even though it was a 7-point game, it was a game that Ball State played very well. And they kept that lead and they kept that momentum despite when Central Michigan tried to chip into the lead. But I think you got to look at the total stats, and Ball State completely outplayed them. 344 total yards to 260. And Ryan, I'm going to bring it up because I always do. 5 for 11 on third down. Ball State finally had success on third down.
Yeah, and then they needed to, and it was something that we've kind of touched on it. They needed to finish drives. They needed to turn some of those instances where they'd get 0 or 3 points into 7 points. That's what they did to start the game. And yeah, third down efficiency is huge. And going back just to Kyle Kelly, yeah, 101 yards, not going to jump off the stat sheet at you when it comes to how many yards he threw for, but what I look at is the efficiency. 13 for 16 when a week prior against Toledo he was 4 for 16 with an interception. This time Kelly did not turn the ball over and really looked more confident, because with the Toledo game, it was his first time really being treated as the full-time starter. It was rainy and windy, but this game he had another week under his belt of getting the starting reps in practice. He looked more confident as a passer. And yeah, he's not going to throw it 50 yards down the field, but he was able to get the ball in the hands of his playmakers, hitting those intermediate routes and just taking care of the football and keeping the chains moving. So probably Kyle Kelly's best game as a Cardinal, definitely up there. And if he can play like that down the stretch, who knows? Maybe the Cardinals can make a little second half run as the season progresses.
Yeah, you never know. And we talked about the elements a little bit, as how that played a factor, especially with Kyle Kelly. But he looked, as you said, very sharp last weekend against Central Michigan. 13 completions for 16 total passes. He was poised in the pocket. He never felt too pressured, had time to throw. And most of his passes were really well, too. They were put in the right spot. And Keon Magwood, and I know Tanner Cozy, who also had a couple catches, made a huge impact in that game for the Cardinals. And I think looking to that is they're going to be looking for that as we head now into midweek action. So now that we head into midweek action, the first game for Ball State coming up is against Bowling Green. Bowling Green is a very interesting team, in my opinion. They are, you can look at it at 4-4, but you can also look at it some of their wins they've had. A big, dominant 41-14 win over Akron. But a couple weeks ago, they shocked the world, destroying Georgia Tech. I feel like we had to mention that Bowling Green played an all-around game, and this is not going to be an easy game for the Cardinals. Landon, let's start with you on what you make about this Bowling Green team.
Well, you're right. I look at this team, I see 4-4, but I also see their biggest win, 38-27 at Georgia Tech. I mean, I know Georgia Tech, they're not anything special in the ACC. They haven't been since they stopped running the triple option a few years ago. But still, for a MAC opponent to go on the road and beat an ACC team by double digits at their place at Bobby Dodd Stadium, that's a beautiful stadium, by the way, in Atlanta. So to go on the road and beat an ACC opponent by 11 points, that's pretty awesome. But I do look at 4-4. They average 23.8 points per game, 154 pass yards a game, and 148 rush yards a game. This is going to be a tough team to beat. I'll say that. I think we're up to the challenge, though. I know we're going to get into more depth in a minute here, but I think our defense is up to the challenge against this Bowling Green team.
Yeah, Ryan.
Yeah, I look at Bowling Green. I think, again, like Landon said, it's going to be a challenge. You're playing them on the road, and this is a team that, you beat Georgia Tech, you're doing something right for a MAC team to go on the road and beat a Power 5 school, regardless of what type of Power 5 school it is. Right. And you also look at their 2 MAC losses. They were to Miami of Ohio and Ohio. So really, their 2 losses were to 2 of the better teams in the conference. Some might say that those are the 2 best teams in the conference, maybe throw Toledo in there as well. But the point being, they've won 3 of their last 4. They're coming in hot. And I think that when you look at Bowling Green offensively, I look at Terrion Stewart, the running back. He's 4th in the MAC in rushing yards currently. Statistically, 110 carries, 670 yards, 7 touchdowns, averaging a really solid 6.1 yards per carry. And I think that, yes, he's going to be a challenge for this Ball State defense, but the Ball State defense played a run-first team last week in Central Michigan and really limited what they were able to do on the ground. So I think that they're well prepared for this. And Bowling Green also has a pretty experienced quarterback in Connor Bazelak. He's been around the block in college football, was at Mizzou, then IU, now has found his way to the MAC in Bowling Green. So he's very experienced, and he this year throwing the ball a lot, kind of a mixed bag, 5 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So we've talked about the Ball State defense. If they can get that interception total to get up a little higher, win the turnover battle, that could be another potential key to the game as well. So I'm excited for this one. I'm eager to see how the Cardinals play coming off of a win. They're, obviously both teams are going to be extra well rested with this being a midweek game, so you got like a week and a half, so you almost have a mini bye week in there. I think it'll be fun. It'll be a challenge, and always glad for a midweek action to come back. Yeah,
and I think you mentioned it earlier about what an impact Terrion Stewart has made to that Bowling Green team, and just going over, we talked about what a day Marquez Cooper had on the ground for 162 yards and a touchdown. He had 19 carries for 131 yards and 3 touchdowns against Akron. He was running all over the place. So for the Cardinals, and we'll get into the keys to the game a little bit later, but it's definitely got to feel like trying to hold him intact. And now, Landon, you also mentioned kind of like a little bit of the stats here, but Bowling Green is not a huge offensive team. They score about 22 points per game, give up about 25 points, but they average about 153 yards in the air, but also allow almost 200. Do you feel like this could be a big day for Kyle Kelly, Lane Hatcher, whoever's going to get the ball? Could it be a big day on it, or do you think the elements, because, guys, this is going to be like one of the coldest games of the year without question. We're looking at average temperatures from 25 to 40 degrees in the night where there's going to be no sunlight, and they're going to be very kind of fatigue when it comes in keeping their hands warm. And how much of a factor do you guys think that'll play? Landon, let's start with you.
Good. I love it, Cole. This is exactly what Mid-American football is. I mean, this is they practice in it. All week they practice in it. Especially late October, early November. I think it's November is the most important month of college football. Winning in November is so important, and I know this game is in November. So, look, I think we need to stick with what works. We know we can run the ball well. I really don't want to see us take a step back and try to be something we're not. We know what we are at this point in the season. We know we can run the ball well, and we know we can rely on our defense. I mean, you look at the last 3 weeks, our defense has played so well. Yeah. Just needed one more offensive play to get past Toledo, but we just couldn't get over that hump. Stick with what works. I think we need to run the ball instead of passing.
Yeah, Ryan.
Running the ball is great. I think it's the same thing as last week. I think it's you got to do the little things right. You got to avoid the penalties. You got to take care of the football, and you got to finish drives. So, Ball State's probably going to be a bit of an underdog in this one, going on the road, playing a Bowling Green team that's been playing well as of late, won 3 of their last 4, as I mentioned. They're also 2-2 in conference play, so right in the thick of things in the MAC East. So it'll be a challenge, so they just have to, it sounds basic and cliche, but really just play complementary football, have everyone stick to their assignments, not try to do too much. And if they limit the penalties, don't give anything away to Bowling Green. Make Bowling Green work for every yard, every point, every first down. I think they have a chance to keep this one interesting to the fourth quarter, and once you do that, anything can happen.
And you kind of mentioned it about how a factor running game is going to be, and we do know that Bowling Green has a very strong running game. And now, kind of looking at the head-to-head matchup, this is a team that has had Ball State's number, frankly. Ball State is just 9-21-1 against Bowling Green. And here's something interesting. Bowling Green's last game against the Cardinals came in at 48-10 loss in Muncie in 2015. These two teams have not played in 8 years. And here's something else, is Bowling Green has had their number as of recent. They've won 7 of their last 8 games, and Ball State has won just 1 game since 2000. What do you guys make of that? Landon?
Well, it's time that it comes to an end. It's time the streak comes to an end. Playing Bowling Green, they're such a close opponent to us. Any team in the MAC, it's going to be significant to us. But, this one, it's Indiana and Ohio. There's not much good blood between the two.
Right.
It's time that streak comes to an end. And I look at the key matchups at the line of scrimmage. Again, can we run the ball well against them and hold them like we did against Central Michigan? We allow 123 rush yards per game. They average 148 rush yards per game. So we rush for 159 yards ourselves. So we got to watch their quarterback, Bazalek. He's their quarterback. He has 895 passing yards this season. I think if we can get good pressure on him, he has 6 interceptions this season. I think we need to force some turnovers and end that streak. And what a good time to end the streak on the road at their place.
Yeah, his accuracy has definitely been in question a lot this season. And this is also a Bowling Green team who plays solid defense against the Cardinals. Again, they haven't played in 8 years, but holding the Cardinals to under 20 points, you're doing a lot of good things when you're holding a team under 20 in college football. Now we're going to kind of move over to the MAC now. And guys, it's finally midweek MAC, our favorite time of the year. Let's start off with the first 2 games, though, coming up on Saturday in Michigan. Western Michigan taking on Eastern. Ryan, what's your prediction for this game?
Always fun when the Michigan squads get together, and it's especially a meaningful one. Both of these teams coming in 4-4 overall and 2-2 in MAC play. Went back and forth on this one, but I am going to give it to Eastern Michigan. I think that their defense really impressed me when the Cardinals took them on a couple weeks ago. I think that their defense gets a late stop to hold on to a victory, but it'll be a back and forth one throughout. I got the Eastern Michigan Eagles winning 28-24.
Yeah, Landon.
Yeah, Western Michigan 2-6, Eastern Michigan 4-4. It's tough to win at Ypsilanti. That field is gray. I've never seen a gray football field.
Yeah, it is something.
It is very interesting.
It's very interesting.
It's always interesting to kind of see a game in Ypsilanti. Absolutely.
Yeah. So Ypsi, I'm going with the Ypsi Eagles. Give me Eastern Michigan to win this one.
The Ypsi Eagles. I love it. I actually have Western Michigan taking this one. And primarily it's just because what I saw from Western Michigan's offense against Ball State. And I keep going back to that game, but seeing Western Michigan's offense and how they were able to really run the ball extremely well, pass it with ease. They had so much success. And we talked about that Ball State has struggled a lot on defense this year. But I still think Western Michigan is the better team. And when Ball State played Eastern only had 2 explosive plays, that big 55-yard touchdown pass, and then they had a couple runs here and there. But to me, I think Western Michigan has an all-around better offense, and even though Eastern Michigan's defense is better, and this game, playing at Ypsilanti, I still feel like I'm going to give the edge to Western. Give me the Broncos taking home the victory 27-16 over Eastern.
Fun fact for you, did you guys know that it's Ypsilanti?
Ypsilanti or
Ypsilanti. It's the Y.
There's no Y. The Y is silent.
It's Ypsilanti.
All right.
Yeah.
There's your
everybody calls it Ypsilanti.
Fact of the day. I'm behind the lines here as Landon dropping it's not Ypsilanti. It's what is it?
Ypsilanti.
I'll just call it Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, let's just call it the gray field at this point, right? Meanwhile, moving from Michigan, we go to Ohio, and we kind of talked about with Bowling Green how their 2 losses were against Miami of Ohio and Ohio U, who are 2 teams and 2 powerhouses in the MAC conference. Obviously, Miami kind of struggled against Toledo last week, but this should be a big one, guys. The Red Hawks visiting the Bobcats. Ryan, let's start with you.
Yeah, you said it, big one. And, the standings kind of speak for itself. There's, you look at the MAC East, there's 3 teams that have 3-1 conference records in the MAC East. 2 of them are playing in this game. You got Miami, Ohio, and Buffalo, all at 3-1 in the MAC right now. Thing that jumps out to me, with Ohio is they're undefeated at home. And I think that plays a role in this one. Miami, back-to-back tough games. They played hard against Toledo but couldn't get it done. I think it'll be a similar result where they play tough. I still think they're one of the stronger teams in the MAC. The Ball State Cardinals will see them at Schumann Stadium to end the regular season around Thanksgiving. That's always a fun one. But for now, I got Ohio beating Miami 31-24.
I love it. And now let's go to your Landon. What is your prediction for this game?
So Miami of Ohio, they're 6-2. This is the game of the week in the MAC. 6-2 versus 6-2. Major implications on the MAC championship. I think the winner of this game might be in Detroit at the end of the year. I'm going with Miami of Ohio on the road. I think they just have too many playmakers that Ohio can handle. It's almost a pick your poison type of game for Ohio. It's going to be a great game. I know not many people will watch it, but this is Mid-American football right here. 6-2, 6-2. It's going to be neck and neck, but I got Miami of Ohio edging it out at the last second in the field goal.
Ryan, you touched on the fact that OU is just so dominant at home, and to me, the game that stands out is against that Iowa State game, and we know that Iowa State isn't a powerhouse, obviously, in the Big 12, but they are a Power 5 team. They are still a very good team. Right. And that's ultimately why I have OU taking it. I think their defense is one of the best, not only in the MAC, but I think they're the country. They've played exceptionally well all season long. And I think being in Athens, there's something different about that place. And going to Athens is not an easy place. And I'm not talking about Athens, Georgia. I'm talking about Athens, Ohio. But give me OU winning this one 24-20. And now we finally reached the time, midweek action, those cold Tuesday, Wednesday night games. NIU at Central Michigan. We saw the Chippewas last week. Do they bounce back against NIU? Landon, let's start with you.
Oh, threw me for a curveball there. Man, tough loss for Central Michigan. They come in to Muncie, they thinking they're going to win this game. We're 4-3. We're sitting good. We competed a little bit with Notre Dame. We're on the right direction. That came to a screeching halt. I think that loss shattered them. I do not think they respond well at home, and I think NIU takes down the Chippewas.
Okay, Ryan.
NIU has had a really interesting season, starting off with a win against Boston College, following that up with a loss to Southern Illinois. So they seem kind of like an unpredictable team, but I look at their last 4 games. They had lost a tough one to Toledo, 35-33, but since then, dominant win over Akron, upset win over Ohio, and they also beat Eastern Michigan last week. So they're hot right now, and they are knocking on the door in the MAC West, 3-1 in conference play, just 1 game behind Toledo, who we'll talk about in a second, and Toledo is 4-0 in conference play atop the MAC West. So NIU, they've been playing hot right now. They've won 3 straight. I think they make it 4, and I think they win 34-23.
Good pick. That's a sneaky team.
I love it, but I gotta say, I think Central Michigan. I think Central Michigan coming off that loss, because there were some bright spots against Ball State, and I think Central Michigan is just ultimately the better team. But I think this is a very low-scoring game. I think this is what you call a midweek action game. Give me the Chippewas taking down NIU 16-13. Who's to say it won't be a game-winning field goal to win the game? But I think Miss Central Michigan's overall the better team. Now, Buffalo visiting Toledo, and this is a game that could get ugly very quickly. Ryan, what is your prediction for this game?
Well, I've got Toledo winning, and I mean, you kind of said it. This is one that, obviously you never know. They say any given Sunday or Saturday.
It's a midweek action. We're going to have the game on if it's 55-0 in the fourth quarter.
But I look at Toledo, and something to note, Toledo receiving some love in the AP poll. They are officially in the receiving votes category. One voter had them at 25, another voter had them at 24, so still a long way to go before they're actually ranked in the AP poll. But anytime a Mid-American Conference team could even just see themselves in the receiving votes category, it really speaks volumes to how well they've been playing. Toledo undefeated in conference play, 7-1 on the season. I don't think they have any problem here. I think they win 38-17.
All right, Landon.
I actually have Toledo in my top 25, right at 25. So this game is going to get ugly, Caden. I think Toledo wins it big. By big, I mean 35-0.
Well, it's funny, guys, because I could mention the fact that I have Toledo winning this one 38-13. But I could see this game being a lot closer, and to me, there's one game from Toledo that's sticking out. Obviously, the Ball State game, but I'm not even counting the weather. I'm counting the NIU game against Toledo when it was a 2-point victory, and Toledo's offense played well, but their defense kind of struggled in that one, and we saw their defense play really well against Miami of Ohio last week. But this could be a game where Buffalo may shock a lot of people, and although they may not be on the winning side of things, I think they do keep it close, but ultimately I could see this one being a blowout for Toledo. Mm-hmm. And now moving on to our final game, staying in Ohio, Kent State visiting Akron. Landon, what is your prediction for this one?
Man, 1-7 versus 1-7.
It doesn't get any better than that.
I mean, my goodness. This game makes me sick. I got Akron, I guess, just because they're at home, to be honest with you.
Yes. Honestly, these are two teams that are definitely at the bottom of the MAC right now and trying to find themselves. And who's to say maybe whoever wins this game won't go on a roll. But Ryan, what is your prediction for this one?
Yeah, two teams that have really struggled this season, especially offensively. Going to be a barn burner. I got Akron winning 13-6.
Okay, I have Akron kind of in a high-scoring affair. I have Akron winning this one 27-17. I feel like these are two teams that have played not their best football. Obviously, you look at it 1-7 versus 1-7, but kind of going back real quick to the NFL, as we saw two 0-4, 0-3 teams play, the Bears and the Broncos, and that was a very interesting game. So who's to say that a midweek action game may not be the game of the week? But ultimately, I do have Akron taking this one. The Zips, I feel like, are a little bit better on paper, and them being home too. I like the Zips in this one. Now, jumping back to the Ball State Bowling Green game, and this game is a Wednesday night. Time is still to be determined. I'd imagine it'll be around 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. So weather will play a definite a part in this game. But Ryan, let's start with your keys to the game for Ball State.
For Ball State, I think it's simple. It's the same thing you did against Central Michigan. You start out strong early. You got to have a good first couple drives, got to get ahead early. Don't let Bowling Green set the tone. You're playing on the road. You're the underdogs. You got to make a statement. But also, we've talked about how strong Ball State is running the ball. We talked about Marquez Cooper, but also Kyle Kelly doing what he does on the ground. If you're playing from behind, you're going to be forced to throw the ball and get out of your comfort zone offensively. So for Ball State, set the tone in the first quarter, make Bowling Green play catch up, and then you should be able to have another really strong performance on the ground. That's definitely what I need Ball State to do in this one.
Yeah, so you're saying Marquez Cooper is a player definitely to look out for the
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he ran for, 160-something yards last week?
Keep it going, right?
Yeah.
I agree. Landon?
My keys to the game, I have 3 of them mainly. Get to the quarterback. We mentioned his inaccuracy has been questioned. He has 6 interceptions this season. Let's rattle his cages a little bit. Let's get him uncomfortable to where he's making those throws that are up for grabs, and we can just go and get him. Stick to what works as well. Let's run the ball. Let's kill some clock. Let's take care of business, and let's get out of Bowling Green with a win. And we need a good start. Too many times we've dug a hole this season. That Georgia Southern game, the Western Michigan game. We've dug too many holes for ourselves. So let's get off to a great start against Bowling Green on the road. And my player to watch on Bowling Green's side is their quarterback. He's either really good or he has a subpar game. So I'm interested to see what type of game he has against our defense on next Wednesday.
Yeah, well, I think for me, it's Ball State, and it's more on the defensive side of things, is they have to contain Terrion Stewart. I mean, he ran all over Akron's defense, as I mentioned, 131 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he's looked like a really solid running back in the MAC conference that people really have to start keeping an eye on, and he's only going to get better and better and more explosive for the Falcons. But they have to contain Terrion Stewart, and something that Ball State did, I'm going to bring it up again, but Ball State did really well on 3rd down against Central Michigan. They were 5-11, so they definitely want to keep in that direction. And they also did really well defensively against Central Michigan on 3rd down, too. Held them for just three first downs when it was 3rd down. They played very well defensively. They made a lot of great moves in the air, but that secondary was very special to watch as well. They were all over the place. Guarding guys. They were not really letting Central Michigan get open at all, and they really tested this Central Michigan offense. And for me, I think they got to do more of the same. Again, I do feel like that he will struggle because you do have to play into the elements here. And Basilak, for me, you kind of got to keep him intact and force him to make those bad options and kind of force him into those pressure situations, and that's what I think is the key for the Cardinals to get the victory. And of course, get the offense going, get the running game going. I think that's their crucial part, and that's their biggest part in this game. For Bowling Green, I think it's simple. They just got to run the ball over the Cardinals and kind of put their defense against the wall and force the Cardinals to being pressured. And for Bowling Green, even though it is a midweek action game, it is still a home game for Bowling Green, and they do play better at home, so they're definitely going to be using home field advantage to them. And for Bowling Green also, for defensively, is to try and force Kyle Kelly to throw the ball a lot more. And although he did have a lot of success, 13 for 16 against Central Michigan, but we all know his main asset is running the ball. That goes the same for Marquez Cooper, and even the other receivers who made a lot, is they were able to find different reads and allowed more options to open up, and I feel like that's the big thing for the Cardinals and really for Bowling Green. But it does come down to ultimately, I think, the defense and whose defense will step up more. So, Ryan, what is your prediction for this game?
After seeing last week, I am feeling optimistic. Honestly, if you asked me to pick this game before I saw the Central Michigan game, I probably would have went with Bowling Green, but I am now really more confident in this Cardinals team after seeing Kyle Kelly take control of the offense, after seeing the way that we got off to a good start, ran the ball well, took care of the football, did the little things right. I'm feeling an upset win next Wednesday. Give me the Cardinals 27-24.
Midweek action W. I love it. Landon.
I think we force 2 turnovers next Wednesday, and I think we walk out of Bowling Green with a 27-21 victory.
I also have Ball State taking this one in a nail-biter, a 19-17. I think the elements are going to play a huge part, but ultimately I think Ball State gets a little bit of momentum in that fourth quarter that they carried over in the fourth quarter against Central. They carry it on, and they do pull off the upset, and who's to say maybe make even a late run, because they are still mathematically possible for Detroit. Although we're going to talk about that if Ball State continues to win in Toledo.
Forget how to play football
for
that to happen.
DeQuan Finn has to forget how to throw a football, and they have to forget how to play football. I totally agree. But there is that possibility. You never know. That's what's so great about midweek action is anything can really happen.
You're in it till you're not. That's what I like to say.
Exactly. So, guys, a lot happened outside of the action, and especially the top 10 and how that kind of changed. And we talked about upsets coming up, and it is spooky season and scary season, really. I know I keep mentioning it, but it's true. These are a lot of the times where you see a big top 5 team or a top 10 team go up against a lower seed in that conference, and for some reason they lose that game and their playoff hopes are done. So, with that, Landon, what is your top 6 going into this week for college football?
All right. You want me to start from 6 and go up, or
whatever you'd like?
I'll start 6.
Whatever you'd like.
I'll start 6 and work my way up, kind of like the CFP does. I have Michigan at number 6 at 8-0. They have yet to play a ranked team. It will be a telling game at Penn State and at home against Ohio State, but they have yet to play a ranked team. So they've shown me a lot, yes, but come on, let's step it up a little bit. Their non-conference schedule stunk, and I mean, I know you can't control conference schedule, but that's just, they need to be better. My 5th team is Florida State, 7-0. If Riley Leonard stays in that football game, I think the Seminoles are 6-1. You look at the score with Riley Leonard in the game. They were scoring at ease against Florida State. Riley Leonard's out. We all know how that went, 38-20. Oklahoma, 7-0. They have the best turnaround in college football. Last year, I think they went 6-7 or something like that, maybe 7-6. They're now 7-0. I think they had the best turnaround in college football. Don't at me, Coach Prime. Ohio State is number 3 for me at 7-0. They have the best resume in college football. They went on the road. Say what you want about Notre Dame. They took care of business against Notre Dame. They took care of business against Penn State, even though their offense did not play well. Their defense is the best in the country. That's my number 3. Washington is number 2 at 7-0. They have the best quarterback in the country. I think Michael Penix Jr. is going to win the Heisman this season. Tough road ahead for Washington, though. That Pac-12 is going to come down to the wire if you look at all the schedules coming out. Oregon has to play UCLA and USC. Washington still has to go through a couple of dogs. And number 1 is Georgia. They're 7-0. They have yet to be dethroned. And to be honest, I know they've struggled in a couple games. A struggle in the SEC is better than a struggle in any other conference. I'm sorry. I'd rather struggle 27-20 against Auburn than struggle maybe 20-13 against a middle of the pack Big Ten team. So that's my top 6.
Okay. Ryan.
Well, I'm actually kind of pleasantly surprised because there's some agreement with this. I also have Michigan at 6, and it's not because I don't think that they're good. I think that they could very well win the whole darn thing when it's all said and done. But like Landon said, they just haven't played anyone. And while Ohio State's playing Notre Dame and Penn State, Florida State's playing LSU, Washington's playing Oregon, Oklahoma's playing Texas, I'm not just going to say, oh, well, I think you're good, so you get to hold that spot. No, Michigan will have their chance to prove their worth against Penn State, against Ohio State, and in the Big Ten championship if they get there. But for now, they played, like you said, Landon, a very weak out-of-conference schedule. Their Big Ten schedule, just the way it's shaped out, the challenging parts of that haven't really come yet. Everything is in front of this team. They could very well be in my number 1 spot when I end up making my final rankings come CFP time. But we'll just have to wait and see. And another bit of a surprise at number 5, I have Georgia, sort of for a similar reason. They do have that ranked win against Kentucky where they were really dominant, and I give them credit for that. And that's why I have them above Michigan. But outside of that, they have struggled with some really inferior opponents. And outside of the Kentucky game, really not a strong strength of schedule. They were tied with Auburn in the final minutes of that one, down 14-3 at home at the half against South Carolina. And they just haven't really looked as dominant. It doesn't look like the Georgia of last year. Again, it's early in the year. They still have a lot of their tougher parts of the schedule in front of them. They play Florida this week. They got a 7-1 Mizzou team coming up next week. They'll play Tennessee, and obviously they also have a good chance of playing in the SEC championship. So similar to Michigan, could still be very good, have the capacity to win it all in my opinion, but just haven't really put it all out there yet. But again, everything is in front of this team. Number 4, I got Oklahoma. They moved down a little bit in my rankings just because they had a little bit of a scare against UCF, but that win against Texas still holds a lot of weight for me, so that's why they hold on to number 4. But the Big 12, there's a lot of potential upsets there in their schedule. They got Kansas this week, Oklahoma State coming up. That'll be a big rivalry game. But as of right now, Oklahoma looking good, and like Landon said, an incredible turnaround for Brent Venables' squad. Number 3, I have Washington. I had them at number 1 last week. They moved down a couple spots due to a really ugly performance against Arizona State, a game that they won 15-7, and yes, they did win. That's why they stay in the top 4 for me, but a really disappointing performance. That offense really struggled against an inferior opponent that I think was 1-5 coming into the game, but they did find a way to get the win. If they lost that game, they'd probably be out of the top 4, maybe out of the top 6. But they win that game, but they won ugly, so they do suffer a little bit. But again, Washington in the driver's seat in the Pac-12, and yes, it did take a crucial pick 6 late to turn that game upside down. Number 2, Florida State. And I think part of the reason that Florida State moves up is because Washington struggled while Florida State beat a ranked team. And yeah, Duke maybe isn't the strongest ranked team, but they ended up having a strong second half, beating another ranked team. That's 2 ranked wins that they have. That dominant win against LSU to start the season. Even though LSU maybe isn't what we thought they were, that still holds a lot of weight because of how dominant it was. This is a team that there was a lot of hype around them coming into the season, and so far that hype seems warranted. And at number 1, I've got Ohio State. And the way I see this is, truthfully, Michigan might be a more talented team than Ohio State. But right now, based on what these teams have done, Ohio State, they've played incredible defense, and they have beaten 2 really good opponents. Winning on the road against Notre Dame, I don't care if Notre Dame has 2 losses. You go on the road, you win in that environment on prime time with a late comeback the way that they did. Their defense was spectacular, giving them a chance to come back in that game. That carries a lot of weight. Also, beaten Penn State. Again, is Kyle McCord as good as CJ Stroud was? Probably not, but that doesn't matter because Ohio State's defense really stepped up against a really quality Penn State team that was ranked 6th coming into the game. So obviously, I think that's what puts them above some other teams like Michigan, like Georgia. So that rounds out my top 6. Definitely very interesting. A lot of different opinions in the AP poll and just in sports media in general, and even on this show. And I know Caden will hear yours. But to round it out, I got Ohio State at 1, Florida State at 2, Washington at 3, Oklahoma at 4, and Georgia and Michigan at 5 and 6 respectively, as my first 2 out.
First off, Ryan, I would love to say that I love where you have Ohio State. Maybe a little bit biased there, but no, I feel like, again, I still can't believe that I have Michigan, me being an Ohio State fan and me living in Ohio my entire life, but still having them ranked Michigan over Ohio State. But I do, and I'll go from 1 to 6 actually. So I actually have Michigan at the number 1 spot in the country, and I'm going to go from 1 to 6. And to me, yes, you can say that Michigan hasn't played anyone tough, but is that on them? I mean, that's on the schedule and how it comes out, and anyone they've played, they've completely dominated. And yes, you can say Michigan State is not anywhere to what they were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, because these were the matchups that you'd look at these for marquee matchups between Michigan State and Michigan. But any time that a rivalry can go into an away stadium and dominate the way Michigan did, I mean, guys, they were up 42-0 after the 3rd quarter. They completely dominated Michigan State. And I know Michigan State is not a dominant team or what they were a couple of years ago, but that is still a big rivalry game. Those 2 teams still have a ton of history. And J.J. McCarthy looked fantastic. 21 for 27, 287, and 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. I can even talk about the defense and how great they've played. Once again, another game where they have allowed, this game they didn't allow anything. They allowed 0 points against Michigan State on the road. But also, it's another game where they dominated offensively, dominated defensively. This is a complete team, and it's to the point where it's like, I can't say the schedule is what it is because they're doing what they should be doing. And if they're a top 3, top 5, top 1 team, they should be doing this, and that is exactly why I have them at my number 1 place, because they've continued to dominate, and they've played the best football I've seen out of any of the teams that I'm going to mention, any of them.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Am I able to do that? Okay.
Of
so
course.
You're saying that number 1 team, because they're blowing out, you're putting them over Ohio State, which has a better resume, Washington has a better resume, Oklahoma that has a better resume,
because,
Florida State that has a better resume.
Yes, and the reason why I say that is because, to me, Michigan has not had any games this season where they have allowed more than 10 points, where they haven't scored less than 30 points, and where people have watched the Michigan games in the 4th quarter because they're blown out by 20, 30 points at this point. That is exactly what you need to do to be the top team in the country, and Michigan has done that. They've answered all of my questions. That Ohio State-Michigan game cannot come soon enough, Ryan. I know you and I we may talk about that game for an hour, honestly, but that's for another couple weeks. But you do mention the Ohio State game. They moved from number 5 to number 2. That Penn State game, their offense was very shaky. Very shaky. Thanks to Marvin Harrison, they were able to win that game, honestly, offensively. But we've talked about Marvin Harrison the entire time on this, is how an impact offensively Ohio State's played, thanks to Marvin Harrison. But their defense was lights out against Penn State. I mean, they were all over the ball. Penn State had no time in the pocket. They were flustered. They had 3rd and long on so many occasions. Ohio State dominated that game defensively. And you look at that score, 20-12. This is a game where Ohio State should have won by 2, 3, maybe even 4 touchdowns. They dominated defensively. Their offense again struggled. And Penn State's defense, nothing to take away. They're a solid defense. But we know Ohio State. We've seen them this year. Landon, you obviously saw them against Notre Dame. That offense struggled, but that defense was very impressive.
Best in the country.
That's why I have Ohio State at number 2. And who's to say this Michigan game coming up for them? I believe they are in a bye next week, or this week, and then they take on Purdue and then Penn State. So in a couple weeks, who's to say my schedule won't change? But right now, I still have Michigan number 1, and I have the Ohio State Buckeyes at number 2. Number 3, and this is where it really moved, Ryan, because you're probably wondering, well, where's Georgia? You always have Georgia number 1. They're actually at number 4 now. So my number 3 is Florida State. Florida State's been the all-around team, and I've been very impressed with what I've seen from that Seminoles team all season long, and they did it again against a ranked Duke team, winning 38-20. The game wasn't close. Again, they've dominated everyone, although not as much as Michigan, and that's why they're not my number 1 team right now. That LSU win, if you look at it, holds more and more value the way that LSU has been playing as of late. Yes, that Missouri game, we know, Ryan, they really struggled, 49-39 between LSU and Missouri. But 48-18 against Auburn is a very good win, and then 62-0 against Army. I mean, there's nothing to take away. You scoring 62 points and holding a team scoreless. Exactly what Michigan did. So the more and more that the season comes and that LSU continues to play well, that Florida State win holds a lot after in the week 1. So that's why I think Florida State's the all-around package. I've loved what I've seen from them. They're my number 3 team. At number 4, I do have Georgia because we can't lie. I mean, Georgia has struggled. They have shown a lot of question marks this season. Ultimately, I think for me, that Vanderbilt game was a game where 2 years ago, even last year, they dominated by 30 points. They won by 17 against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt has always, for the last 10 years, really been one of the worst teams in the SEC. And again, they are an SEC team. It is on the road. But we all know Georgia's one of the best teams in the country. And that's a game they should win by 4 or 5 touchdowns. So the fact that Georgia was able to win by just 17 really doesn't stand out to me. And that Kentucky game was the only game that I really looked at and was like, wow, that they deserve to be the number 1 team, and they don't. Close game against Auburn, and I know that's a big SEC matchup, but even Auburn's not what they were. And that Ball State game, I'm seeing a lot more of Georgia from that first quarter than I am from that second quarter against Ball State, and I think that's why they have my number 4. And the main reason is they're number 4 because they haven't lost yet. You know, you can't rank a team with a loss higher than, well, assuming you're a Power 5 and you've been a top 5 team in the country for a very long time now. At number 5, I have the Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma has been very impressive, and that win against Texas still stands out, and it will all throughout college football implications, and until we get into the Big 12 championship. And again, we could see those 2 teams again, and it lining up that we very well could. But that UCF game, guys, was way too close. Yeah. Way too close. Struggled at home in Sooner Country, where they had to outscore UCF 14-6 in the fourth quarter to win by 2 points. You're not my number 4 team if you're barely getting past UCF, but a lot of these teams, except the one team, Michigan, has really struggled in games this year, and that's why I have Oklahoma at number 5. And at number 6, Washington. Ryan, what is it about these Arizona schools that continue to kind of like shock the world and like throw in some really close games? We talked about how Arizona has really played a lot of Pac-12 teams close this year. Arizona State, kind of, they were a wild. I mean, that was a game that Washington should have dominated, and they won, 15-7, thanks to a pick 6. Like, that's a game they should easily have won by 20, 30 points. So I think Washington is still a very good team. That win against Oregon really holds a lot of ground to me. But I do feel like Washington isn't better right now over these top 5 teams. So to go over it again, I have Washington at 6, Oklahoma at 5, Georgia at 4, Florida State at 3, Ohio State at 2, and Michigan at number 1. Those are the top 6 for all of us. And now let's go into what we believe the top 5 games of the week. So let's kind of start off with the division that we just talked about, or the conference that we just talked about, the Pac-12. Oregon visiting Utah. And Utah it is not easy to win at Utah, and we do know these two teams have a lot of history. So, Ryan, what is your prediction for this game?
I mean, I really went back and forth on this one. And the Pac-12, it's just so fun this year. It's a shame that in the conference's last season in existence, they have so many good teams. This is such a top-heavy conference. I mean, USC is still a really good team, and they're probably the fourth best team in the conference. Oregon, they had that disappointing loss to Washington. Utah beat USC. They did lose to Oregon State earlier. So there's just so many really good teams in this conference. I'm giving it to the Ducks, though. I think that they get this much-needed win for them. Obviously, it's a big one for both teams. Has tremendous Pac-12 championship implications. I'm giving it to Bo Nix and the Ducks in a thriller 27-24.
Okay, Landon.
You know, loser misses out on the Pac-12 championship in this game, in my opinion. This is so crucial. Utah at home is special. However, they're still with a third-string quarterback at the end of the day. I think Oregon, Bo Nix, is more talented. It does scare me, Bo Nix on the road. He has been terrible on the road. They need their defense to step up. I think Oregon wins a slugfest, 28-24.
Yeah, I think this game holds a lot of ground in the college football playoff, and this is a game where you definitely could look at and be like,
Yeah, Oregon's not out of it yet.
no, they're not, absolutely not. And Oregon beating Utah, and the college football committee looks at it, and this is a huge win for them, or Utah, vice versa, who's also in it. But I think Oregon is the better offense in this one. I think this will be a high-scoring affair, but give me the Ducks winning this one 41-30. Let's jump from the Pac-12 now to the SEC. Georgia taking on Florida. Any upsets here, or do we think Georgia keeps it rolling? Ryan, let's start with you.
Georgia, I still am not completely sold on them, as you can tell from my rankings, but this is still a team that they find ways to win. Having Brock Bowers injured is definitely going to be something to watch for this team as the season progresses. Not sure exactly how long he's going to be out. Georgia and Florida, it feels like no matter where these teams are, this is, a really kind of underrated tradition, seeing these teams get together in Jacksonville every season. Should be a fun one. I think the Gators play hard and keep it respectable, but ultimately I think the Dogs have a strong second half and win 34-24.
Okay, Landon.
Man, largest cocktail party in the country on Saturday. Eesh. Florida does not have it in them to be number one. Give me Georgia, 38-17.
Wow. I kind of was closer with Ryan's in the fact that I think Florida is good enough to keep it close with Georgia. And this game being, it is in Jacksonville, of course. The Gator fans are going to be very passionate. They're bright and early and getting ready for that game. But I do think Georgia is still the best team in this matchup. And I also still feel like they are the number 4 team for a reason. So for that reason, give me the Bulldogs winning this one 31-16 over the Gators. From the SEC to the ACC, Duke at Louisville. Louisville has shocked a lot of people this year. Landon, how do you feel as if Louisville can play this game against Duke?
Without Riley Leonard, I think Duke is the Duke as we know them. I like Coach Elko a lot. I do like Coach Elko a lot, but you are what your talent is, and Duke is kind of getting a little bit of reality without a good quarterback. Last time we saw Louisville, though, they got ran off the field by a terrible Pitt team.
That was a very shocking game to many.
I think Louisville wins this one 34-24 at home.
Okay. Ryan?
Looking at this one, it's interesting. Louisville knocking off Notre Dame, playing well. Then they kind of fall behind and completely kind of come up flat against Pittsburgh. 38-21, a blowout loss against, and as you said, inferior Pitt opponent. But I do think Louisville bounces back here against a backup quarterback. They get Duke at home, which I think is huge in this one. Two of the pleasant surprises in the ACC. Going at it in this one should be a fun one to watch. Always great to see some surprise contenders in college football and in any sport. Give me Louisville winning this one, though, 28-17.
To me, that loss for Louisville really sunk them. Maybe not even in the college football playoff implications, but maybe even a New Year's Six Bowl and a really high leverage
game. The fact
game.
that it came off of a great win against Notre Dame.
A fantastic win against the Irish. And that the Irish who are coming off that, we have a Irish fan in Landon here, but that win against USC was astonishing, a 48-20 against USC in that game. Notre Dame going into Louisville and then
laying an egg.
Seeing how that game played out definitely impacted our friend Landon here. But I do think the Cardinals do bounce back, and I think Louisville is the better team. And with Duke's questions, and yeah, I feel like we are still seeing a team that we've seen from Duke, and without their quarterback play, they're going to struggle. So give me Louisville winning this one 27-13 over the Blue Devils. Now, we're just jumping from each conference at this point, but going from the ACC to the kind of Big 12, but BYU taking on Texas Tech. Ryan, let's start with you.
It's Texas. Just got to.
Oh, I have.
No, you're. I mean, no. There's a lot of different schools in the Big 12, Texas Tech, Texas State. There's a lot of Texas A&M.
Yes,
a lot
BYU
of Texas
taking
schools.
on the Texas Longhorns.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know why I had that, but yes.
All good. With Texas, though, I mean, you look at this one, no Quinn Ewers in this one. It's going to be Malik Murphy starting against BYU. You know, there's been a lot of chatter. Will we see Arch Manning? At least not to start, because it appears that Malik Murphy will get the start. But apparently, just looking at some headlines right now, it seems that the Texas coaches have discussed playing Arch Manning versus BYU, but no decision made. So certainly a fun storyline there. With Texas, obviously, that Oklahoma loss kind of limits how high they can climb in the rankings for now, but if they win out, they have a really good chance of seeing Oklahoma again in the Big 12 championship when it's all said and done. And BYU still kind of getting used to life as a Power 5 team. I think Texas wins this one pretty decisively, even though Quinn Ewers is out. Give me the Longhorns 31-7.
Okay, and Landon, before you get into your prediction, if BYU is able to somehow win this game, do you think the College Football Committee will look at them, or do you feel as if this win really doesn't mean anything other than just beating another team? All right, now Landon, let's jump into yours.
Texas had Oklahoma hangover last week. That is gone. No Quinn Ewers, no problem. I think the offense slows down a little bit, but I think the Horns roll 28-0.
Shutout. Interesting.
Yeah.
You don't really see that in the Big 12 too often. Mm-hmm. I have Texas winning this one 45-30. I think, to me, Texas's offense is just so talented all over the place. And even though Oklahoma played really well against Texas, I do think the Longhorns are the better team. And again, BYU still kind of gaining that experience, joining the Big 12.
Probably haven't given up 30, though. That's a lot.
It's a Big 12 team. I always look at these games, and I'm always like, there's a chance that it could be a 45-40 game or a 20-0 game. I mean, you really don't know with the Big 12. But I do feel like Texas at home is a lot better offensively, too. And BYU's offense, I think, can keep it up for a little bit. But ultimately, I do have Texas winning this one by 12 points. All right, last conference here, guys. Ohio State coming off that huge win against Penn State. But this is a game where Ohio State can't really overlook, because this Wisconsin team, they are a good team on paper. Ryan, Ohio State at Wisconsin, what is your prediction?
Well, Ohio State's my number one team, and I know that's something you talked about and kind of rebutting that was how dominant Michigan has been. And we're looking at Ohio State's schedule. I mean, they were dominant against Youngstown State, Western Kentucky, Purdue, took care of business against inferior opponents, also beat a pretty good Maryland team that wasn't ranked but was 5-0 heading into their matchup, beat them by 20 with a strong second half. The only game that maybe gives you a little bit of pause is that IU game to start the season where they had a really slow start, but they still ended up pulling away and winning by 20. So I think Ohio State is a really good football team, and yes, they're playing on the road in Wisconsin. You know, Wisconsin, they're 5-2 this year, so certainly can't overlook them. But I trust Ohio State's defense to give themselves an ability to be comfortable early, even if Kyle McCord doesn't have it from the start. I think Ohio State wins in a dominant fashion, 42-10.
Okay, Landon.
How about this story? Luke Fickell taking on Ohio State. You know, I like Luke Fickell. I've always been a fan of Luke Fickell. Ohio State coming off of a physical game against Penn State in a game where their offense did not perform well against a team on the rebuild. 5-2. It's hard to win in Madison. Man, this is a sneaky game, but you know. It's time to jump around.
It's time to jump around.
I like Wisconsin 28-27 in this one.
Ooh, wow. Okay, I gotta say, as an Ohio State fan, that one hurt a little bit, but I can understand it. Going into Camp Randall is not an easy place to play, especially for Kyle McCord, who really doesn't have that experience and that high leverage. Yes, he's played at home, and you could even say Notre Dame, but to me, I think a Big Ten matchup and going into Wisconsin is not an easy win. I was debating a lot about this, and I was debating, can Ohio State's offense keep up against that Wisconsin's defense? And ultimately, the Buckeyes are the better team. Ryan, I want to get to your point right after I give my prediction here, but Ohio State, I have the Buckeyes taking this one 31-23. I think they keep it rolling, and frankly, I think that Michigan game is their only game that they really have any question about winning going forward.
Yeah.
But the fact that Ohio State played, and I've kind of watched a lot of Buckeye football this year, that Youngstown State game, they did not play their best football. They kind of struggled. Yes, you can look at it and say, well, they were up 28-7 and it was over by halftime. But again, Ohio State offense, they had their starting team out there and they really kind of didn't do a lot against Youngstown State. Notre Dame was a great win for Ohio State. They played great defensively. They made plays when they had to late. Maryland was a game that they were losing in the second quarter until Ohio State got a pick six and got their offense going. Their offense was nothing against Maryland until that pick six happened, and then they were able to score 17 in the fourth quarter, and it looks like a big win, but 20 points, you score 17 in the fourth quarter. It's a 3-point game headed to the fourth quarter. The point is, though,
that Maryland is probably better than any Big Ten team, or any team for that matter, that Michigan's played this year, and it's still not even Ohio State's first or second best win.
We got Ypsilanti, we got Ypsilanti, we got it all here in week 4 of the Behind the Lines. But we really appreciate you guys listening, guys. I can't wait for this weekend to begin. Midweek action next week. We got a great show coming for you guys next week. I'm Caden Vincent with my wonderful partner, as always, Ryan Stojets. Landon, we really appreciate you joining us. This was episode 4 of Behind the Lines, presented by Victory Honda of Muncie.
This has been a production of SportsLink Digital Radio.